This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you are in the future because you're listening to Cristina Gomez and Shifting the Paradigm.
Howdy, folks. This is Lou Elizondo, and you are listening to my very good friend Cristina Gomez on Shifting the Paradigm.
This is Ray Sobbs from the UnX Network, and you're listening to Shifting the Paradigm with the intrepid Cristina Gomez on the X.
You're listening to the UnX Network, KUNX-DB, Kansas City, Missouri.
Welcome to Shifting the Paradigm. I'm Cristina Gomez on the Paradigm Shift channel and on the X, the new mainstream KUNX digital broadcasting talk radio. Are you ready for this? Because we're about to embark on an hour and a half of UFO shenanigans and paranormal adventures. Right here is where we look and think outside the proverbial box. We jump down those rabbit holes where you get a red Tic Tac instead of a red pill. First off, make sure you subscribe and share these shows on social media to those who you think are having their minds and eyes open to the reality of the UFO mystery. All of these shows are great primers, and in the push for more clarity, transparency, and disclosure, the more voices demanding answers, the better. For those listening on KUNX Talk Radio and affiliates, I have two other shows each week that only air on my YouTube channel. Mysteries with a History is live on Thursdays at 2:30 p.m. PST with my co-host Jimmy Church of Faded Black Radio, and each week we cover a different topic in depth. On Fridays at 3 p.m. PST, the live show Strange Paradigms is where I cover all the strange weekly news and mysterious headlines from around the world. So definitely check out my website at strangeparadigms.com for all show archives, more information, and direct video links to my channel. Oh, and make sure to hit the notification bell on YouTube. Let's get into some news. We got a big drop in the UFO community. Headlines say, revealed after 32 years, the top secret picture one MOD insider calls the most spectacular UFO photo ever captured. Micah Hanks and I covered it on Strange Paradigms last Friday, but for those that are not familiar with the story, let's get into it. On August 4th, 1990, two young men were working as chefs in a hotel in Scotland. At 9 p.m., after a long day in a hot kitchen, they drove out, and they hadn't gone far when they saw a huge, solid, diamond-shaped object about 100 feet long, hovering silently in the sky above them. Terrified, they hid in some bushes and looked up. Minutes later, they heard the scream of a jet aircraft going north. The jet came back and circled the thing before heading off on its original course, as if the pilot had seen the object too and had to come back for a closer look. Eventually, the two men stuck their cameras out from where they were hiding and fired off 6 frames. At that point, the object shot vertically upwards and disappeared way, way up into the sky. That picture was quickly swept up by the Ministry of Defense in the UK and has only been recently released. It's a picture the MOD and the National Archives have tried their utmost to keep hidden. While the information would normally have been released after 30 years, the ministry has not released the original photo and wants the name of the witnesses sealed for a further 54 years until 2076 because of privacy concerns. However, we got the image sooner than expected. So, did these witnesses really see an unidentified flying object? Or is this just an elaborate plan to keep a secret project at bay? Either way, the article ends with this J. Allen Hynek's famous quote: "Unidentified to whom?" And that's my new favorite quote. So, what are your thoughts on this image? In your opinion, is it the utmost spectacular UFO photo ever captured? Let me know in the comments. With the news out of the way, let me talk about my guest. Today we have retired Navajo Ranger Mr. John Dover. Jonathan is a veteran law enforcement officer. He has worked with the City of Winslow, Arizona Police Department, the National Park Service, Navajo Historic Preservation Department, and the Navajo Nation Rangers. He retired from active duty as a lieutenant in 2011 after 31 years in law enforcement. During his work on Navajo Nation lands, he, along with Stanley Milford Jr., were assigned over a period of 10 years to officially investigate and document significant cases involving Bigfoot, the paranormal, Navajo witches, and UFOs. Welcome to Shifting the Paradigm, Mr. Dover. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Your experience and history dealing with UFOs and instances of the paranormal is extensive. But for my younger audience who may not be familiar with you, can you tell us who is John Dover?
Okay, John Dover is I'm in the Native American way. We usually uh, just talk about ourselves real quick. So, my name is Jonathan Redbird Dover. Um, on the Navajo side, I'm Kia'ani and Red House, born for the Cheyenne and Kiowa Apache people in Oklahoma. I'm also part Filipino. So I was born and raised in Los Angeles, and that's basically who I am.
What an interesting combination. I had no idea. And you are one of the very few people of Navajo descent that has looked into the legend and lore and realities of the Skinwalker and has talked about it publicly. Why did you take that risk when the Navajo culture believes that those who talk about them or investigate them are actually inviting their evil and sometimes fatal influence into your life?
The Navajo Skinwalker has become almost legendary in the American Southwest. And understand that I'm only speaking about the Navajo version. Other tribes have other versions of shapeshifters. Um, so, in concentrating only on this type, um, we've come to find that it's kind of like Toto pulling the curtain back on a little bit from showing the wizard behind the curtain. Uh, our aim is to educate people and to kind of pull the curtain back a little bit from that veil and let people see that these things are real and they can hurt you, even kill you. Um, but we believe that people have a need to know, and we tend to be pretty careful about the information we put out there.
I definitely understand that because it is, in a sense, a taboo. But once again, for those that are not really familiar with this mystery, what can you tell us about the Skinwalker from your own experience and research?
Okay, the Navajo Skinwalker represents several different types. There is, I have been told by my grandfather, who was trained from very young age to be a medicine man. that every medicine man in the old days was trained on how to perform a lot of the black magic. The reason that they were trained to do this was that they had to have an understanding of how a curse was made in order to counteract it. It was up to the medicine man himself to have a sense of social responsibility about how this information was used. We also have a person who uses this kind of information in plant gathering to achieve the same thing. And then you have another type that just learns it. We also have a fourth type who is not dedicated to the medicine man information. And what they do is they learn it from somebody who already knows it. And these are kids. So we see some kids that are learning how to use this stuff now that have no background in healing and medicine, but that are learning it just to learn it.
So I'm aware that with the medicine man or medicine men in Navajo culture, it requires a lot of rituals and it requires extensive amount of work to become one. Can you explain to us the how to become a medicine man and the significance of it to the Navajo culture?
Well, in the Navajo culture, a medicine man is a healer. He's kind of like your doctor today. In the old days, they were general practitioners, just like our modern doctors. And nowadays, you're seeing more and more medicine men that are learning late in life, and they're not schooled in everything, so they become specialists, kind of like our eye, nose, and throat specialists or whatever. So there's a big change. And then you have roadmen, which are Native American church that are loosely considered medicine men also, because they do the healing. So a medicine man is generally taught from a very early age, maybe 8 or 9 years old. They're started to learn this. Just an enemy way ceremony may take 240 songs sung over 3 nights in an exact order, and every sentence has to be exact. They can't fudge it or make a mistake. Otherwise, it negates the whole ceremony. So this is kind of like the glue that holds the whole culture together. Is the various medicine men on the Navajo Nation.
The medicine men of today, are they any more different from the ones in the past? Because I know that in the past they were seen as more spiritual leaders as well.
The medicine men have always been healers. As such, they're revered in their separate communities. And many times people will come from a very, very long way to see a particular medicine man because of his reputation in healing. So likewise, they have become synonymous with leaders in the Navajo tribe. However, originally they were the spiritual leaders or the people that would do the healing if illness was encountered.
You mentioned a little bit earlier that your grandfather was a practitioner to become a medicine man. And he, at a young age, he showed you Polaroids of handprints turning into animal prints. Was this one of the major occurrences that influenced you to become a Navajo Ranger, or was there something else that made you take that step?
Well, my grandfather was taught from a very, very early age to become a medicine man, and he studied most of his life. In his 20s, I believe, he went to a church meeting with the Christian Reformed Church and ended up accepting Christianity. His whole deal after that was that he told people he was trained to be a medicine man, but instead he later on became a preacher. So very unusual. At that particular time, I was already a ranger, and he knew that I had been encountering these type of things, and he showed me the Polaroids that he had in his collection. Since then, he's passed, and I don't know whatever became of those pictures. But I remember him showing them to me and explaining that you could clearly see the handprints either changing into an animal print or an animal print changing into a handprint. They were very clear.
You mentioned about your grandfather becoming a Christian preacher, but having the background of a medicine man. So, my question is, in the Christian tradition among Navajo churchgoers, are skinwalkers believed to be demons or shape shifting witches or something else?
They're considered shape-shifting witches. Um, and in I know in Anglo culture, there is a good witch and a bad witch, or a white witch and a black witch. In Navajo, most shapeshifters are considered evil. They are um, not something that you would look at and go, "Oh, this is actually a good person." They're completely uh, evil as far as their people are concerned here.
So, is the skinwalker as feared now as it was in the past? And also, are there modern instances of them appearing or affecting people in greater numbers as compared to the past?
Okay, the Skinwalker is active today. Um, they are real. Um, I can say with some certainty that in the past there were many of them. Back in 1868, 69, for about a period of 4 or 5 years, there were witches that were rounded up in the Shiprock and northern New Mexico area. And these witches were all put to death. So there is talk about that happening after the long walk. Um, there are a lot of different historical incidences that deal with them, all the way up to court cases in the 70s where people were put on trial for killing witches. Lately, there are more now than I think there always have been. They are out there. I've known the identities of several of them. Those are like aces that you keep in your back pocket for just such a day as you need them. And we've had incidents out of Winslow, out of Flagstaff, out of a lot of the surrounding border towns on the reservation of these things showing up, even in Albuquerque, so and Phoenix. So it doesn't surprise me that they are active today.
And I'm aware that it's rather difficult to kill a skinwalker. Is that true that they're almost impossible to kill?
The A lot of the information about them is that they can run extremely fast. They've been known to run on 4 legs as an animal or on 2 legs as a human type, and chase vehicles that were doing 65 miles an hour. I've had one instance where the person ramped it up to 70. They were still being followed by one, and finally they hit it about 85 and started finally pulling away from this thing. So they can run extremely fast. I've had police officers tell me that they encountered them, and when they ran off, they were so fast it just defied explanation. Uh, they can be killed through normal means. There's a lot of information out there that says, oh, you need to have you dip your bullets in ashes, and then there'll be kind of that silver bullet routine that you see with the television Wolfman. But in actuality, I've had people that shot them and killed them with just regular bullets, and or wounded them. So we know that they can be killed. There is another way that they can be killed. We had one family that recognized one of them, and they were fearful because they thought it was going to retaliate against them if it found out. And we told them that according to Navajo tradition, if you go up to its door and knock on it and tell them, hey, we know who and what you are, and we know who you are, that within 3 days they will die suddenly and mysteriously. So we have yet to see anything. We've seen some examples of that occurring. Let me put it that way.
Can you share some of those examples with us?
Well, and we've had people that were suspected of being skinwalkers, and they died very suddenly for no explicable reason. We've seen some that had been killed that in a coyote form or a wolf form, they were trying to get in and attack the sheep in the corral, and they were shot. And in one case, the thing died, or it ran off actually, in this case. And several days later, about 3 days later, it died. And it was a man that had long been suspected of being one of these. So we see cases like that. In another case, one was shot and with a .22, and the coyote dragged itself into the brush, and the person went and grabbed it by the hind leg and dragged it out with the rifle in the other hand, hopefully preparing to drag it out and shoot it again. As they dragged it out of the brush, it changed into a human leg in his hand, and he dropped it, and they ended up calling an ambulance and the police. The police showed up and basically said, we want nothing to do with this at all. The ambulance loaded it up, even though the Navajo staff knew what it was, took it into the hospital. The Anglo doctors chased all the Navajo staff out of the emergency room and proceeded to do surgery on this guy and saved him. So we were able to determine that this incident actually happened through interviewing several staff members that were present at the hospital at the time that this happened. So yeah, these things do happen, and pretty, not frequently, but they do happen.
Shape-shifting into wolf-like creatures. This sounds kind of like lycanthropy, which is the academic name for alleged werewolf creatures. So can we interpret skinwalkers as much like werewolves without the influence of the moon, or something else entirely? And if they are bitten by a skinwalker, will the victim become one?
The idea that if you're bitten or scratched by one, you're going to become one is false. However, that being said, there are other Native American tribes in the United States. There's about 570 tribes across the United States. Also, you have First Nations tribes up in Canada and other tribes up in Alaska. So in these other tribes, there are various representations similar that are shapeshifters. And so you have things like the rake. In other cultures, you have just even up in the Pacific Northwest. I've talked to people from Africa, from Europe, from just Australia that have similar shapeshifters. The shapeshifter here, what we believe they use is they use the DNA of whether it's people or animals. So they will generally take a pelt of fur that of the animal they want to turn into, and use that to affect the change through chants and singing, and they become the animal. Now, a lot of people out there, they think, well, this is just a one of those things where they believe they change. Looking at lycanthropy, you have people that actually believe they're changed, but there's no physical change. But in this case, they can change into birds, owls, crows, different types of animals. I even had a report of one lady that passed one on the side of the road, and she said the bottom half looked like a kangaroo and the top half was a man. So It just depends on what kind of pelt they can get out of. They can also change into a human likeness of a person if they have their DNA. So Navajo children are taught from a very early age that you don't leave your fingernails, your hair in the brush. You don't leave things around that contain your DNA. You cover up if you defecate, if you pee in the woods, you cover it up immediately. You don't leave sweaty clothes laying outside, because all of that contains traces of your DNA that can be used by a witch. And what they use it for is they change into a likeness of you, and they can approach people that you know to deliver poison.
I have heard something similar to that, but not to that extent, and that's honestly rather terrifying. Those are the kind of stories that you would tell at a campfire to scare your kids. But Mr. Dover, we are coming towards a break. We will be right back after this.
Sure thing.
Gigawatt paranormal powerhouse, KUNX-DB, The X.
This is Micah Hanks of the Micah Hanks program right here on KUNX. And right now, you're having your paradigm shifted by the one and only Cristina Gomez.
Your new source for alternative talk radio on the internet. The X.
Howdy, folks. This is Lou Elizondo, and you are listening to my very good friend Cristina Gomez on Shifting the Paradigm.
Do you have an interest in the paranormal? Then you'll love the unxnetwork.com. The X is your streaming audio and video for everything supernatural, strange, and mysterious, like UFOs, Bigfoot, ghosts, and so much more. From hosts like Jimmy Church, Whitley Strieber, Micah Hanks, and Cristina Gomez. Visit the unxnetwork.com show page for a complete list of all the paranormal programs you'll find on the X. Be sure to follow us on Twitter for updates at KUNXDB. Follow our Facebook group, UNX Network. Find the podcast on Spotify, iHeart, Audible, and Apple Podcast. It's time. It's new. It's the X.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Explaining the unexplained. The new UNXNetwork.com.
Hi. This is Race Hobbs, head of programming at the new UNX Network, and you're locked on Shifting the Paradigm with the intrepid Cristina Gomez on the X.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you are in the future because you're listening to Cristina Gomez and Shifting the Paradigm.
Welcome back. With me today is John Dover, retired Navajo Ranger. In your opinion, based on your research, are skinwalkers entities that originate in another dimension or realm? And are they brought here through portals via dark sorcery? Or are they actual medicine men, aka shaman, that are able to perform shape-shifting?
Okay, interesting question. The skinwalker today is an actual person. They don't have to be a medicine man. I've known of some of them that were 20, 22-year-old kids that just learned this thing. One of the bad things about it is that you have to kill somebody and sacrifice basically to obtain this type of power, and it has to be somebody that you love dearly. There have been instances where people have stumbled into a meeting of these, and they've been given the choice, either join us or die. The skinwalker will dig up graves and obtain pieces of bone or skin off of a dead person. In the old days, a person was buried with a copy of the Treaty of 1868 stuffed up into their chest cavity in order to curse the treaty. So we have historical accounts of that. They are known to have sexual relations with dead bodies. And so, it's a really terrible thing to realize that there are people out there that practice this, and they don't care about us. What they want is the fear and the power that comes with that fear to keep entire communities in fear of them.
I'm aware that the skinwalkers have been shot by people, and the shooters tend to become mentally unhinged. Something to do with a curse, maybe. Does this mean that they are impossible to hunt?
Actually, they're not impossible. In the cases that I know of where people have had mental issues afterwards, they shot and killed one. They went to the local bar in the border town and started bragging about it. And apparently, the other shapeshifters went out and poisoned them in some way, and they ended up dying because of that. But the thing is that it doesn't necessarily have to be something that drastic. We've seen attacks by skinwalkers just because somebody paid them to do it. We've seen some that just attack people because they were jealous of them, whether they had something that they wanted or they were successful in their lives. They didn't like that, and so they were attacked.
Are there skinwalker clans or groups that hang around each other?
Not that I know of. they're the ones that are involved in what's called frenzy witchcraft, which is they're not necessarily medicine men, but they've learned enough about how this works. Um, and the amateurs, shapeshifters that are learning it just to go out and terrorize people. Um, there doesn't seem to be. They do have what they call um, Sabbaths, where skinwalkers will get together, and there are groups of them that are known to each other, but not as a group like we think they are. They have members that come and go, but they'll generally hang around together when they're changing.
That's kind of terrifying if you ask me. I wouldn't know how I would feel if I would be able to see a gathering like that. Now, you were on season 3 of the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. Do you think that location has more paranormal activity due to the public attention that is placed there along with the name? Or are there other hotbeds in the west of the United States that have similar strange things going on that the public is unaware of?
Well, Skinwalker Ranch is just one location, and they've had enough things that went on there that the U.S. government got involved through the NIDS program and ATIP, the Aerial Threat Identification Program. $22 million was said to be moving around, and a lot of that was directed toward investigations. Um, but it was all kept hush hush, and a lot of it is still classified to this day. What we found out is that there are areas, Sedona, just south of Flagstaff, is an area that has a lot of frequency changes and portals and things like that. And UFOs are seen on a pretty regular basis there. There are other places, such as Archuleta Mesa over in Dulce, New Mexico, on the Jicarilla Reservation, where UFOs are seen to go in and out of Mesa there. Um, we have one up here in northern Arizona, several actually on the reservation, where unusual occurrences happen quite a bit. And so they're scattered all around. Some are more, some are less, but there is activity in all of them.
The ones in and around your area, can you give us some examples of some things that you've investigated or things that you've heard?
We've investigated, in one case, we had a gentleman that was seeing UFOs every night. The story is actually kind of humorous because he was seeing these UFOs and he'd run in, and his wife is Navajo and he's Anglo. And he'd say, I saw this, I saw this. And she's over there going, yeah, right. Which is really typical of a Navajo woman, uh, not going to believe you right out, prove it to me. So he went out and bought a really nice camera and started taking pictures. And then she came out and saw them too. They had a lot of incidences that were really similar. Shapeshifters showing up, UFOs right next to their corral, UFOs flying into a mesa, black helicopters flying over right after these incidences. So there was some government interest in it too.
I would see why this is a fascinating topic. What are the precautions that you have to take before and after doing field investigation research on skinwalkers?
Well, initially, you're going to say your prayers. You're going to use your corn pollen, so to speak, and protect yourself by any other means necessary. I've always got a obsidian arrowhead in my truck for protection, and I smudge myself after every paranormal case that we do. Actually, it's even more than that. Mostly about once a week or twice a week. I'll smudge myself. It's kind of like taking a spiritual bath. And you're by smudging, I mean you're using cedar smoke, you're using white sage, and you're using sweetgrass, and you're burning that and washing it over your body with an intent in your mind that it's going to protect you. You pray at the same time for protection. So you have to have that type of faith in your creator that's going to protect you.
In your experience, you said at the beginning of the show that there are various categories of skinwalkers. Is there a category of skinwalkers that originates from another dimension that have been observed coming through portals? And if so, are they coming from another planet? Because sometimes they have been seen along with a UFO sighting, or can they both be from another planet and another dimension?
Well, what we've seen out here is that the skinwalker can travel vast distances in short periods of time, and has an accelerated sense, so to speak. He can run faster, as fast as a car that travels. And we've had numerous cases where we've had witnesses tell us that this has happened to them. Uh, the thing that I look at is that we think that there's some use of a parallel dimension or another dimension that they're slipping into to make these vast travels and pop out again. Um, there are cases, say up in Skinwalker Ranch, where uh, in the middle of the night, a hole appeared in the air that had blue sky in back of it, and an object came out, crawled out of the hole, and fell out onto the ground and stood up. And this was a Bigfoot, and walked off. So we see more in dimension travel by actually Bigfoot than we do with skinwalkers.
That is definitely one of my favorite stories when it comes to Skinwalker Ranch. But there is a ranch to the west of Sedona called the Bradshaw Ranch. Were there any stories of skinwalkers? Have you looked into that ranch?
I have not personally looked into the ranch. Believe it or not, when we received all these cases, they were assigned, and we were pretty much we call it voluntold. We're going to do this. Um, so what happens is me and my partner Stan, we handle these cases, but we don't go out and investigate these cases on our own, just for our own curiosity. We kept it only to cases that were assigned in the normal course of our duty.
Of course, I can understand that. And you've looked into other very mysterious and elusive creatures such as Bigfoot. So when you were a ranger, you investigated when people called you in on their sightings. Can you tell us about those sightings, your findings, and the protocols used for investigating in an official capacity?
Okay, we had lots of sightings of Bigfoot uh, from places up in the Carrizo Mountains and in the Defiance Plateau area. We've had them in the forest. We've also seen them even in Cameron, where it's nothing but desert. And we've seen them actually in Window Rock. So right where the metropolitan area is. So it doesn't seem to matter. They've crossed highways. We've had impeccable witnesses tell us, yeah, one ran right in front of me, and they were on their way to work that morning, or USDA workers out in the field had two of them run across the road in front of them. So these are chance encounters that we've had. The way we investigate them, I am a certified criminal investigator. Was trained in the what they call FLETC, or the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glencoe, Georgia, and it's an 11-week course on top of your basic training that you've already had. So what we do is we go into one of these cases. We take it as any other criminal case because our aim is to collect evidence and be able to testify to something in court that, you know, whatever happened is 99.9% that it in effect did happen. So we have to be absolutely positive that something did occur. In these cases, we've tracked Bigfoot for miles. We've backtracked him for miles. And we're talking 22-inch footprints with a 5-foot stride from heel to heel. So we're going to photograph, we're going to take plaster casts, we're going to take measurements, we're going to look for hair samples. We're going to do everything possible so that if for some reason we ever arrested the guy and put him in handcuffs, we'd take him in and be able to file charges on him because he's stealing sheep, he's killing animals, you know, doing a lot of different things. And when grandma and grandpa sees one step over their corral and tuck a sheep under its arm and walk off with it, you know, that's and everywhere else that's considered theft. So, you know, we treat these cases very seriously and try to find some resolution as to what exactly happened.
Well, the First Nation tribes have usually seen Bigfoot as the forest protectors, and there's even stories of individuals and groups making friends with them. Have you come across any modern stories of such situations?
We had a family over, I'll just say, in the Shiprock area along the San Juan River that was encountering a group of Bigfoot. What they did is they would leave corn in a pile right next toward the river side because the Bigfoot were coming into their cornfield and taking the corn. The Bigfoot would come in and visit with their horses. They were in a corral. And according to the people there, they didn't bother the horses, but they would actually braid the hair of the mane and leave it like that. So the family told us about this. They said that eventually an alpha male showed up and suddenly the visitation stopped. And the horses that were in the corral one by one started being killed. And so they took the last horse out and sent it off somewhere else. But it was very traumatic to the family because having horses is a sign of wealth. And they said that after that, they didn't try to put any more food out to contact the Bigfoot.
Yeah, no more gifting after that because you come and give him a gift and he wants to take everything. That's a little bit too much for me. But when we're looking at Sedona, Arizona, up through to the border of Utah, including Flagstaff, Cameron, Tuba City, and up to Lake Powell, this seems to be an active zone of strangeness for UFO sightings and cryptids. Where is the epicenter, in your opinion, to be able to see UFOs on a regular basis in that geographical area of Arizona? And why is this area so active, in your opinion?
Well, we've had reports of UFOs pretty much all over the reservation. We've had occupant sightings where occupants were seen on the ground. Um, in Navajo, they refer to them as little children because there is no direct Navajo word for alien. Um, in one case, we had police officers up in Uintah that would go out at night and they would talk about going to watch the submarine races. They would get out north of Uintah and look at the mesas to the west, and they'd see lights coming up off of the horizon and skipping around and moving in all sorts of maneuvers. And so they joked about it because it was such a regular occurrence. So there's lots of activity. They tend to go in what they call flaps, which is different years have different areas where it manifests even more. We don't know why this happens as it does. I used to see UFOs a lot. I saw discs, I saw triangles, I saw orbs and squares and cigar shapes, everything else. And it got to the point where I says, well, if I'm going to be seeing these things, I might as well be filming them too. And I got me a dash cam. And as soon as I put that dash cam in, I haven't seen anything, which is kind of okay with me.
Man, I was gonna say I need to follow you around when I go to do some sky watching because it seems like you're the one attracting all of these very interesting shapes. But talking about Arizona, you've done a lot of research and tours around Chaco Canyon where they have petroglyphs left by the Anasazi that depict what some interpret as extraterrestrials. What, in your opinion, allows people to allude to that possibility?
Well, like I said, I can speak to Navajo culture and a little bit to Hopi culture, that they have depictions of gods or what they call holy people. And in Navajo tradition, the Yebiche are considered holy people. They are beings that have come to Earth to uh, impart knowledge to man. The Hopis have something similar with their Kachinas. These are many different types of holy beings that have come to them in the past and imparted knowledge. And so they have a lot of this. Now, you look at other Indian tribes all across the United States, most of them have something similar where they have oral histories of people, star people coming to them. In the case of the people down in southern Arizona, you have a mountain range called the Estrella Mountains. Estrella in that native language is actually interpreted as Stargate. So they said that a lot of things have come through there. So there are apparently portals all over the place.
Do you have a particular UFO sighting that has left a lasting impression on you? An object that you've seen right up close, maybe? Or have you seen any of these little children beings?
Okay, I'll take you back to 1984. This was before I was doing any of these investigations, but having a lot of unusual occurrences happening. I was on my way home. I had just started with Winslow, Arizona Police Department and working the graveyard shift. And me and my then wife were traveling back to the reservation from I-40 between Flagstaff and Winslow. As we were on the dirt road and approaching the railroad tracks, we could hear this really loud sound of heavy machinery going. And my best imitation of it would be this rum, 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 rum. But it was really deep, and you could just feel the sound go through you. Um, we lived out there for years, out by the railroad tracks, and we know what trains sound like, what diesel engines sound like, and it didn't sound like anything we had ever heard. What I saw flying over the tracks with a light shining down was a cigar-shaped object heading from east to west. It was traveling at a speed of maybe 15 to 20 miles an hour. It had one single light shooting down from the front from the tip, and it looked like a spotlight, but it was very collimated and was on the ground in front of the ship. And as it was going through, I remember I stopped my car and I got out. I looked at the time because that's what they did on the X-Files in those days. And I proceeded to watch it, and I was just filled with this curiosity. I think I would have gone up to it and knocked on the side of it if it had come down and asked it for a ride. Um, my wife was just screaming at me, get back in the car, get back in the car. And so I finally did after it went off toward the cinder cones toward Flagstaff. And we drove the rest of the way home. When we got back, a shooting star went across the sky. And I remember her yelling they're back. And she ran in the house, just screaming. And, I knew it was a shooting star, so it didn't bother me, but left a lot of questions as far as what I had seen. And, the thing that gets me is that today, when I ask my ex, do you remember that incident? She'll look me dead in the eye and say, it never happened.
Oh my gosh. That sounds a lot like the scene from the railroad tracks in the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So it makes me question, you said that you looked at the clock right when you saw this object. Did you witness missing time?
I did not see any missing time then, although I've had several incidences of missing time since. And this is one of the reasons why I got the dash camera. You'd be going down the road in the middle of the night. You would pass a location that you've seen many times before, and you think to yourself, "Oh, I'm about 20 minutes away from home." And you drive and drive and drive and drive, and then you pass that same location again, and you find out that 20 to 30 minutes have been lost. That's happened to me several times. One time I actually gained over a half hour, maybe 45 minutes of time, and got to somewhere I was going much quicker. And over the miles that I had to drive, I would have had to been doing 150 miles an hour to get there in the same amount of time that I did. So those kind of things have happened.
That is unbelievable. Well, Mr. Dover, we're coming towards another break. We'll be right back after this, and I have so many more questions for you.
Sure thing.
Million gigawatt paranormal powerhouse, KUNX-DB, The X.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you are in the future because you're listening to Cristina Gomez and Shifting the Paradigm.
I want to thank all of you for listening to The X. But did you know you can watch live streaming video and catch your favorite video casts on the UNX Network YouTube channel?
Wow, you mean I can watch the X shows anytime?
That's right. Watch any show, anytime, even binge watch your favorite programs.
Which shows are on the UNX Network YouTube channel?
You can watch Most Haunted with Dan Terry, Entity Voices, Paranormal Evidence, Paranormally Blonde, and Unexplained Phenomena Australia, and many more. Also, be sure and catch live coverage of special events and special broadcasts from the UNX Network.
That's great. I'm going to subscribe to the UNX Network channel right now.
Awesome. You can find everything you need to know about the YouTube channel at unxnetwork.com. That's unxnetwork.com. It's your one-stop shop for everything unexplained. It's the new mainstream. It's the UNX Network.
Explaining
The unexplained.
the new unxnetwork.com.
Are you ready to read about true paranormal events? UNX Media publishes nonfiction books about UFOs, ghosts and haunted places, time anomalies, cryptid creatures, and more. Just like KUNX-DB Radio, it's all about unexplained phenomena. Visit www.unxmedia.com to see our list of great book titles by Debbie Ziegelmeyer, Gene Walker, Devin Listrom, Wayne Lawrence, Bill Spicer, and yours truly, Margie Kay. That's unxmedia.com.
Gold loves chaos. uncertainty, and disarray. History shows us what gold does when people aren't sure about the government, the stock market, their jobs, or their retirement savings. Our national debt is skyrocketing. Gold and other precious metals are a defense measure against inflation and a stock market that might take years to recover. So what can you do right now to protect yourself? Call United Gold Group. We offer gold and other precious metals delivered securely within 72 hours. Are you worried about the stock market? We can also help you set up a real gold or silver IRA or a 401k. Safe and secure. United Gold Group makes gold ownership affordable. Call now and get up to $2,500 in free gold or silver with a qualified IRA. Call 800-753-8534. That's 800-753-8534 or visit UnitedGoldGroup.com.
About your UFO sighting. So what about local law enforcement from your time in the Navajo Rangers or other agencies being aware of such things such as skinwalkers, Bigfoot, UFOs, and these topics they try to bury or refuse to investigate? Or have you at any time sensed that such cases get filed and sent out of the state, maybe to Washington, D.C.?
We've had cases up here on the reservation that are, how would you say, they come in the source of stories that have been told from police officer to police officer. This stuff happens all over the place. Other police officers are involved in these cases. They see them close up. However, for the Rangers, we were actually assigned to investigate these as opposed to other agencies that didn't have a mandate to do that. So there is a ridicule factor out there that has been, many years in process. And this is that people that report this stuff, they're mentally deranged, they're crazy, there's something wrong with them. And everything is tended to be disproved in some way. It's swamp gas. They saw the planet Venus, whatever. And so nobody wants to be thought of as crazy. When we started investigating these, we did it to the best of our ability, but we didn't talk about any of these cases. Come 2010, we had gone to the International UFO Congress with the idea of looking at books and more research material to kind of teach ourselves more about these, what would be considered esoteric subjects. And while we were down there, we talked to some of the speakers, which included Stanton Friedman and MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, and Dr. Lynn Katai, who did the documentary on the Phoenix Lights. And all of them says, "Oh my goodness, you guys need to be speakers," And so Arizona MUFON invited us to come and speak for them. And then the very next year, we were included in the speakers for the International UFO Congress. So and then I got the feeling once they told us this, that at my age, I'm getting a little too old to worry about what people think of me. I'm not the only one that has had experiences. I'm just the only one that'll talk about it freely.
And we are so grateful to hear your stories and for you to openly talk about these things. So, when you were assigned these cases for those instances with which had actual evidence or were rock solid like X Files, who would you report to? Like, I mean, did your reports get classified and sent up the chain of command? And what I'm trying to get to is there's a certain type of case classification that brings in the black suits to take over the investigation?
Not necessarily. What we were entirely tribally funded organization, the Navajo Nation Rangers. At the time that I was there were 15 officers covering 27,000 square miles of land. The Navajo police at the time had about 250 officers covering the same amount of land. So these reports would be documented. They'd be because of the sensitive nature. And one of the things that we did is we guaranteed people's anonymity. So we would leave their names off of the reports, or if they were put on the reports, the files were immediately locked up, and only the chief ranger and us had access to them. These reports have since gone by the wayside because they updated the system, and the old reports could not be migrated over, which is just fine by us. They were also included because we didn't have anything to say Bigfoot case, UFO case. We would put them as wild animal complaints and other such innocuous types of titles that would fit in our report writing system. This was so we didn't have to create new areas that we could put them in. So they were in there, and like I said, we do have some of the materials still in our possession on disk drives and stuff, but most of them are gone.
Gone how?
When they tried to migrate the files, they were unable to bring them over, and so they just disappeared. They do not go to any other agencies, and they don't go up a chain of command. Although we have had military interested and have they've flown over our locations with unmarked helicopters numerous times. We've also had investigations where Bigelow Aerospace Research investigators that were part of the ATIP program came out and did joint investigations with us looking into these type of cases.
Okay, then. Well, shifting gears a bit. Now, Mr. Dover, I am fascinated by the concept of portals, as in how they manifest, where they lead to. Can they be opened as a result of natural geologic oddities, or are they entirely technological? So, looking at the spirals at Chaco Canyon, they are prevalent across the West and even around Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. It is believed to depict portals. Can you tell us about the belief of portals that the Navajo have?
The Navajo creation story tells about several worlds that they came through. They started out in a world of darkness. They migrated from there into a world that had water creatures and animals. From there, they go into another world that has more insect creatures and giants. And when you hear about them coming into this world, they see a hole in the sky, and they take what they say is a couple of reeds and put it up into the hole and climbed up through the hole and entered into an area called Dineta, or the place of emergence, into the this world, which is they classify as the shining world. So there's a lot of stories like that within Indian tribes all over the United States that they have come here from other worlds. The idea of portals comes from this the theory, the string theory, that there may be more than one dimension. There could be 10 or a dozen. There could be an infinite number of parallel dimensions that are right next to us or co-inhabiting space with us. These dimensions operate at other frequency levels. And so the key to them is to hit certain frequencies to open these portals up. We don't know how that technology works. They're just starting to look into that at Skinwalker Ranch, and they're seeing a frequency of 1.6 gigahertz where these things are manifesting. We see other incidents where certain frequencies, well, they had an early episode there where they had a Jewish rabbi come and do some chanting, and they immediately had cold temperatures come in. They saw orbs floating around. So there's something to this. We vibrate at a very specific frequency. If they figured out a way to disrupt that, we would just cease to be. Our atoms would just come apart, and we would just disappear. So there's those frequencies tend to hold us together. We think that all the paranormal incidents involving hauntings, involving Bigfoot, involving UFOs are all interrelated through the use of parallel dimensions. And even the case of David Pilates' missing 411, that people are inadvertently stepping through these portals and disappearing, sometimes within sight of their camp, and are never seen again. So we don't know how it works. We know that the idea of portals is universal. These spirals are indications all around the world. You see them in petroglyphs and pictographs. So I think that there was a whole different technology back in the day that was being utilized or understood. And even though we build digital watches today, we don't have a clue as to what these are.
What do you think happened between that transition of our ancestors drawing these all over the place to now where it's really a question on if portals truly exist?
Well, we get into this idea of science. I mean, if you think about it, 100 years ago, there was no question that man could not fly. It was so foreign. And there was a lot of stuff that was written about it that says this isn't possible. You know, now we have jet planes flying over every day, hundreds of them. So as we go along with our technology, we're finding new and new things, you know. The idea of warp drive, which was something that was only dreamed about in science fiction like Star Trek, is actually being looked at today. The CERN Hadron Collider that they have in Switzerland and France is 17 miles of underground passages where they have a collider that accelerates objects to near light speed and collides them. They had an experiment back years ago where they tried to open a portal and send a message through. So the government has been looking at the idea of stargates, portals, wormholes, all these things, and faster than light travel for a long, long time. And they're very interested in this technology. We think that it's always been there, that the ancients knew a lot more than we give them credit for.
Who wouldn't be interested in portals? If I could tap into it, I definitely would. Are there other Navajo ancient stories and legends that have credence in the 21st century that you've investigated?
Those were the main ones. I mean, you know, we talked to Navajos out here. They knew about UFOs. They just treated it as, oh, this stuff happens all the time. Yeah, we see them all the time. It's no big thing. We've had incidents of Bigfoot where, the stories go back to the late 1600s where they've encountered Bigfoot in their oral history, and they talk about it. So I guess for us, it's nothing new. We just treat them as another case to be investigated. We're looking for answers, yes, and we're being skeptical. We've disproved quite a few cases that we've run into of people that said they were UFOs, they weren't. People that said that they were being harassed by skinwalkers that weren't. Things like that.
So in that case, when you're doing those types of investigations, how are you able to discern the disinformation from fact when you're talking to witnesses that claim that they have encountered skinwalkers or had UFO sightings or have dealt with Bigfoot?
When we interview people, it's not like you see on TV where, well, tell me about your story, that kind of thing. That comes much later. We're going to be asking very personal questions. We're going to be asking you, are you taking prescription medication? Do you take drugs for recreation use? Do you drink? How much do you drink? What type of drugs do you take? To make sure that you're not prone to confabulation. What kind of prescription medications are you taking, and when was the last time you took them? We're going to look back at their past, what their neighbors think of them, what their family thinks of them, before we even start a lot of the interview. So it's not like we're just going to go, oh, yeah, we're going to listen to you and believe everything you tell us. We're also going to do something that they call ancillary, subjective ancillary, where you're going to ask a question, you're going to receive an answer, you're going to ask another question, you're going to clarify. You're going to keep going and keep going and keep going to clarify the answers that you get. You're looking at body language. You're looking at facial expressions. You're looking at like the sanpaku or how the eyes look. Indications like if a person looks up one way and then looks across and then down, are they rehearsed in something, or are they looking for the words that they want to find? There's all kinds of little tiny micro expressions that you'll see with people that are trying to be deceptive. All of this comes into play being trained investigators that you're always looking at. You're not going to accept everything just based on, oh, he said so.
You've mentioned on TV and in interviews that the Navajo people know that UFOs are real. You don't like the term belief because it's akin to saying you believe something without evidence. And you have stated, quote, in these cases, people have seen enough UFOs, UFOs that have landed, UFOs that have flown over so often that it's just a fact of life. So I have multiple questions here. First being, do you think that you are pre-selected to have a sighting, or do you think they're random, or is there something spiritual about it?
Okay, if you actually look at the totality of the circumstances, people that live on Navajo Nation land, there's not a lot of electricity. So we have dark skies out here. And when you go outside, you're hopefully looking for starlight to be able to find your way around, or moonlight. So the sky is wide open and it's horizon to horizon. So you're going to see a lot. That's what we've noticed out here. You get into Flagstaff, and even though Flagstaff is a dark sky city because it has an observatory, there's enough ambient light that you don't see a lot of the stars. You don't see a lot of the things that are happening. And people tend not to look up. They tend to look down, which is normal. You don't want to trip on something. So in the cities, I've been in Los Angeles where you were lucky if you saw 2 or 3 stars. And, those have to be stars of greater magnitude than the surrounding stars. So yeah, it's no wonder that you don't see things. Um, Also on Navajo, people are a little more in tune with their surroundings. A lot of times you're living miles away from your neighbor. And so you're not hearing a toilet flush every night right next door, or somebody screaming, at their kids to get inside. Uh, it's pretty quiet, and you're more likely to encounter something or see something because of that. So they're in tune to their surroundings and the environment. A lot of them own livestock, so they're always looking out for their livestock. And so they're aware of noises of predators coming in to try to take them at night. Uh, and then in Navajo culture, you have this idea of the holy people that have come in the past. And there's still a connection to that today. When we ask Navajos why they didn't report it to somewhere like MUFON, they tell us that if we report it to MUFON, a whole bunch of people are going to come up here and these things are going to go away. And to them, these are holy ones that are coming to visit, and to chase them away is tantamount to being a heretic, I guess.
Can you tell us some sightings you have investigated that were hard to disprove as something other than a UFO sighting?
Yeah, we had a rather famous case called the Old Man case, where an old man saw lights coming up through the forest where he lived through his window, and he thought somebody was coming in the middle of the night to come visit him, and he was wondering who was coming. As he went out the front door to see who was coming, he noticed some kind of a round craft flying above his house and circling it. It then went up to the ridge line behind his house and hovered there. He said that several figures came out of it, and they got on something. He says that there were 4 of them in line that were gliding down the hill, and it went to a neighbor's house that's about 1.5 miles away. It went back up to the craft shortly after, and then came down toward his place. He had a small dog that, it was a pup, kind of a blue heeler, light gray with a lot of spots on it. And it ran out barking. And out in the dark, he heard something go yipe, and it came running back, went up to the doorstep of the house, laid down, and would not move, curled in a ball. So he started getting a little nervous. He went back inside, and he's looking out his window. And he sees 4 of what he calls little children with big heads, black eyes, and they're wearing either a light gray or silver or white type of skin tight outfit on them. As he's watching them, he says that each one carries a little flashlight in their hand. And the flashlight is producing a collimated beam about 1 inch in diameter. And one is red, one is blue, one is green, and one is yellow. And he says that they're shining these things all around like they're looking for something on the ground. And they came to he's got solar lights around his house like you'd buy at Walmart. And as he's watching them, he says they gathered around one of these solar lights. And as they started to lean in, the light faded out and went out. And he says they all, ended up stepping back from the light. And he says the light came on. And he says as he watched them, they'd keep going back and forth, leaning in, the light would go out, they'd lean out. And he says they were just fascinated by this solar light. After a while, he's getting a little upset because he says, what are these kids doing around my house at 1 a.m? So he goes out, grabs a dry cell flashlight, and goes out the front door, down the steps, and around the side of the house. And he's going to come around the side, flash the flashlight on them, and demand to know what they're doing out there. As he came around the back step, he tripped on it. And this guy's in his mid-80s. And you and I know that at that age, if you trip and fall, you could easily break something. He says next thing he knows, he's picking up his head and looking up, And these things are in line with each other and moving up a hill, almost like they're straddling something. And they're not making a sound, but they're moving back up toward the craft, and they get back in, and the craft takes off. So we found out later that this pup, we weren't told until maybe 3 or 4 weeks later that the pup had died. Otherwise, we could have had it necropsied and found out the cause of death. They had another dog there that was a Rottweiler that had pups. When we were there, that dog was ready to snap its huge chain, barking at us. He said that on that night, that dog stayed in its doghouse and never came out and didn't utter a peep. The house next door that these things had visited, they had a bunch of real small pups, like little balls of fur that were just learning how to walk. There were about 6 or 7 of these, and they were stumbling around, rolling, and everything else. You know, that's just how they were. That night, all of them disappeared, and we looked around to see. A predator will usually leave fur all over the place. It'll leave blood. There'll be more than one predator, so there'd be a lot of sign of struggle of something that took them. There was nothing in the entire area. We have no idea why they were taken, if they were taken, but it just sounds pretty sad, you know, that they all disappeared. This gentleman's story did not change. We interviewed him over 4 years, 3 different times, with 2 other investigative teams. And we recorded each interview, and every interview was exactly the same as the last. He never embellished anything. He never left anything out. It was told exactly the same way. So, you know, we have a high degree of probability that he was telling us exactly what happened.
What a fascinating way to end today's show. Mr. Dover, this time has flown by, and you touched so many things that I'm fascinated with. So I really appreciate the time that you spent to be with us. Now, I'm aware that you don't have any social media. So how can people reach you?
Well, they can reach me through, both me and Stan have a website called, it's not a website, I should say, email. It's called Paranormal Rangers. It's Rangers with an S. So all one word, Paranormal Rangers 86515.
You're listening to the UNX Network, KUNX-DB, Kansas City, Missouri.
I hope you enjoyed today's show. I do want to thank Mr. Dover for his willingness to speak publicly about something that his culture considers taboo. His email address is below in the description box. Check out my website at strangeparadigms.com to catch all of these show archives in podcast and video formats, along with guest appearances and all of my social media links, such as Discord, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and more. Follow me on Twitter at eyes_on_the_skies to catch all of my updates and news. I want to wish you all a wonderful week. Please like this video or podcast on your platform of choice and share it with those who have the same interests. Subscribe if you haven't already, because there's a lot more great shows coming to you soon. Be safe, and remember, keep your eyes on the skies.